Assalamualaikum everyone. This is Engineer Kinza Nurmangi and today I am recording the lecture on the river and river types. So this heading is basically the part of the irrigation engineer subject. So let's start this. So before initiating the towards the exact subject, that is the types and river types, I would like to define some terms which are going to be used in these while defining these types of the rivers. So the first term is the discharge. So the term discharge defined is the volume of water flowing through a river cross section per unit time. Okay, so it is represented with a Q and it's measured in cubic meters per second. And its formula is Q is equals to A upon V, where A is the cross-sectional area and V is the velocity. Okay, then another term which is frequently used while defining the types of the rivers is the velocity, which is represented with the V, and it's defined as the average speed of the water flowing through a river channel. So these terms are basically defined in the context of the irrigation engineering. That's why we are discussing the flow of the waters, the discharge of the water. Okay, so average speed of the water flowing through a river channel is basically the velocity, and its unit is meters per second, and it affects the erosion and sediment transport. The next term is the cross-sectional area, which is represented with the A, and it's defined as the area of the river's cross-section. Okay, and it's the multiplication of the width with the depth. Okay, width into depth is basically the cross-sectional area of the river, or the area of the rivers, and its unit is the squares meters. It's required to calculate the discharge. Next is the slope, which is represented with the S. It's defined as the vertical drop of the river bed over a horizontal distance, and it's a unitless because this is the ratio of the two similar parameters, which is the length to the length. Okay, so meter per kilometer, or in percentage we tries to calculate it. And how it impacts is that more the steeper the slow the flow, the more the faster the river will flow, and the more erosion will occur. The next term is the sediment load. Sediment load is basically the total solid particles transported by the river, and those solid particles can be sand, silt, clay, or gravel. All right, so the unit for the sediment load is kilogram per meter cube, tons per day, or meter cube per year. There are two types of sediment load. One is the suspended load and other is the bed load. The suspended load is that load in which the solid particles floats in the water, and the bed load is that load in which the solid particles rolls and slides along the bed. The next term is the sinuosity. The next term is the sinuosity. The sinuosity measures how much a river meanders. It's a unitless ratio. Okay, if the sinuosity ratio is equals to 1, that means the river is straight river. Okay, and sinuosity ratio is the uh, channel length to the valley length. Okay, T of this perennial river is the river which flows throughout the year, regardless of rainfall, using glaciers or spring fade. Next is the non-perennial river. The non-perennial rivers are those rivers which flows only in wet seasons. These are also termed as the seasonal rivers. Okay. Heading, which is the river and river types. A river is a natural stream of the water flowing within a defined channel, usually from a higher elevation to a lower elevation, eventually draining into a sea, ocean, lake, or another river. The higher elevation is also known as the source from where the river's water flow to the lower elevation, which is basically the destination or the mouth. Okay, so classification of the rivers. The classification of the rivers is in such a way that based on the different headings. The first classification is based on the origin and the topography. The type of the river is Himalayan river and the peninsular rivers. Okay, the Himalayan rivers are those rivers which are originating from the Himalayan mountains. These rivers are perennial rivers which flow round the year due to glacier meltings and the snow melting. Okay, see, these rivers have the high discharge and large sediment load. The example of such river is the Indus River. Next type is the peninsular rivers. The peninsular rivers originating from the peninsular plateaus. Okay, these are the seasonal rivers which flow mostly during the monsoon. The example of such river is Mahanadi. Okay, so the such rivers flow through the rocky terrain and these rivers have the less erosion. Next type of the classification is based on the nature of bed and sediment load. The first type is the alluvial rivers. These rivers flow through loose sediments such as sand, silt, and clay. These rivers have high erosions and deposition. These rivers easily shift the channels. Okay, so the example of such river is the Ganga River. Next is the non-alluvial rivers or the rocky rivers. These rivers flow through hard rock bed, means the bed of the river over which the bed over which the river flow is the hard rock bed. Okay, such rivers are stable, have the stable channel and less sediment transport. The example of such river is the Tapi River. The classification of the river based on the regime theory. Okay, the first type is the regime rivers and second type is the non-regime rivers. The regime rivers are those rivers which are in equilibrium and balance. Okay, there is no net erosion and deposition. This river follows Lacey's regime theory, which is V is equals to C square root of R is, where R is the ratio of A upon P and P is equals to 4.75 square root of Q. Next is the non-regime rivers. Non-regime rivers are not in equilibrium or balance. Okay, the subheadings are or the subtypes of the non-regime rivers are aggrading rivers, degrading rivers, meandering rivers, and braided rivers. Aggraded rivers are those rivers whose bed level is in rising. Degrading beds rivers are in falling, and meandering bed is in the looping path, and these have the lateral erosions. Okay, and the braided rivers have the multiple shallow channels. Now the next type of the classification of the river is based on the channel platform. The first type is the straight river. The straight rivers are those rivers which flow in nearly straight path, and these occurs rare in nature. may be artificially created. The second type of this heading is the meandering rivers. Meandering rivers are those rivers which have the large curves and bends. The it depends upon the sinuosity index, which is basically the ratio of channel length and valley length. The next type of this heading is the braided rivers. Braided rivers are those rivers that split into many shallow interconnected channels. This occurs due to excess sediment load and low slope. The next classification of the river is based on the stage of development. The first heading is the youthful rivers. The youthful rivers are those rivers with steep slope and fast flow. These rivers have high vertical erosion, waterfalls, and rapid flow. Such rivers example is the Upper Ganga. Next type of the river is the mature rivers. Mature rivers have moderate slope, balance of erosion and deposition. Such type of the rivers example is Middle Ganga. Next is the old rivers. The old rivers are those rivers which have low slope, wide flood plains and meadows. The example of the such river is the Lower Ganga. The next classification is based on the flow duration. Now, the flow duration, the first type is the perennial river, and other type is the non-perennial river. The perennial rivers are those rivers which flow all year due to glaciers and snow melting or consistent rainfall. Okay, so the rivers which flow all the years due to the glaciers and snow melting or consistent rainfall are known as the perennial rivers. And the example of the perennial river is the Indus River. Whereas the non-perennial rivers are those rivers which flow only during rainy seasons and gets dries in the dry season. Okay, the example of the such rivers are the many small rivers in Deccan. The next classification is based on the stability of channel. The first type is the stable river and other is the unstable rivers. The stable rivers are those rivers which do not have any major changes in width, depth or course, and these rivers are in regime or mature stage. The non stable rivers are those rivers which frequently changes in bed level or alignment. This occurs due to the sediment imbalance and flooding. So these were the types of the rivers. Thank you for listening.